So you always begin with the Namo, tassa 3 times, which is a worship of the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. That is the homage to the Lord Buddha, whose birth, enlightenment and final passing away we are remembering today. And then we go for the refuge, the triple refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saṅghāṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi saṅghāṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi saṅghāṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Which means I go for refuge to the Buddha, I go for refuge to the Dhamma, I go for refuge to the Sangha. For the second time I go for refuge to the Buddha. For the second time I go for refuge to the Dhamma. For the second time I go for refuge to the Sangha. For the third time I go for refuge to the Buddha. For the third time I go for refuge to the Dhamma. For the third time I go for refuge to the Sangha. That completes the traditional 3 refuges. I will now give the 5 precepts. And those who want to take the 8 precepts, you can just be quiet, while those who resolve to keep the 5 precepts for at least today, do so. Pāṇāti pātā veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from intentionally killing living beings. Adina dana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking what is not given, in other words, stealing. Kāmesu micchācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct, especially adultery. When I have a partner, I'll be faithful to them. Musāvāda veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Sura miraya majjapamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking alcohol or non-medicinal drugs which distort my mind and are a cause for the lack of wisdom. And now I give a little blessing, the consequences of determining 5 precepts. Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sukhating yanti silena bhoga sampada silena nibhuting yanti tasma silang visodaye. Which means these precepts, they lead to a happy abiding. They lead to good, well, even wealth. And they lead to stillness, cessation. That's why they should be practiced. And now those who wish to take the 8 precepts, I'll start again from the beginning, from the first precept, only because the 3rd precept is different for you, as well as the extra precept of 6, 7 and 8. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from intentionally killing living beings. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking what is not given, in other words, stealing. Brahmacharya veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from all sexual conduct, not just misconduct, but also sexuality. Musawada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from false speech, such as lying. Sura meraya majapa madatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking alcohol or non-medicinal drugs, which are the cause for perverting, distorting my mental faculties and lead to much heedlessness. Vikala bhojana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from eating in the period from noon, which is the solar noon. It's not always 12:00 by the clock. Solar noon, halfway between dawn and dawn and the setting of the sun. To taking that in the afternoon, evening, nighttime, until dawn of the next day. Nacha gita vadita visukha dasana mala ganda vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from dancing, singing, going to shows, listening to music, or these days that would apply to TV or any entertainment which is on the internet, and also refrain from wearing adornments, jewelry, even makeup, which is not medically necessary. I undertake the precept to refrain from that. Uchasayana mahasayana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from using luxurious, high, you may even say pompous, seats and bedding, to use only simple furnishings while I'm taking and keeping the 8 precepts. It does not mean that to go to sleep tonight you have to sleep on the floor. You can if you wish, A simple bed is fine, but nothing luxurious. Those are the 8 precepts. And these 8 precepts also, they lead to a happy future. They lead for your wealth, because we don't waste so much in our life. And they lead to this beautiful cessation of freedom. That's why you're encouraged, whenever you can, to keep those 8 precepts. And for the last 2,600 years, since the time of the Buddha, people have been keeping these 5 precepts and 8 precepts, and especially on Wesak Day, so many people throughout the world have been for so many hundreds of years, 2.5 millennia, have been determining these 5 precepts and 8 precepts to guide their day as their gift to the Lord Buddha, out of remembrance, gratitude. The Buddha encouraged us to do this. And so anyone we really respect, anyone whose wisdom we worship, in other words, worship means we find worth in it, we want to try and follow their advice, however we can, whenever we can. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.